Welcome back to the battle camp. What the fuck is going on? What is going on? What's going on with the UFC? So as you may know, if you follow the sport, it was rumored or it was talked about that Donald Cowboy Cerrone will be fighting Conor McGregor next, which makes an awful lot of sense. It's a fun fight and it's one that us MMA hardcore fans are really interested in seeing. Now, earlier on this week, Joe Rogan on his podcast was speaking to Brendan Schaub, and he kind of put it out there that the issue with Conor McGregor and Donald Cerrone, why the fight hasn't been made yet, why it hasn't been announced yet, is because there's a bit of an internal struggle between the UFC and Conor McGregor, because Conor McGregor believes that he should be the main event of whatever show this fight goes on, and the UFC are saying, no, your fight's going to be the co-main event. Joe Rogan often drops little gems like this, but you can't really kind of take that with face value, because he doesn't really he says, oh, I've heard, but he doesn't say where he's heard from, etc. And he said a few things over the years that have turned out to be true and some that haven't. So I didn't bother saying anything about it at the time. The reason I'm making this video now is Brett Okamoto, who works for ESPN, who reports primarily on the UFC. He tweeted about this earlier on today, saying that he spoke to Donald Cerrone, and I'll put a link to the article in the description of this video. And basically, some of the quotes that he's attributed to Conor McGregor, for fuck's sake, to Donald Cerrone. These are things that Donald Cerrone said during the conversation that Brett had with him. He says, Conor won't fight unless it's a main event. I don't know if it's an ego thing or a status thing for him. I don't give a shit. I'll fight anyone, anywhere, and I stand by that all the time. I guess he's a prima donna and only takes main event spots. I don't know. And then the article goes on to say how they were targeting this fight to happen on April 13th. And now it looks like... And then they said... and then Conor... fuck's sake. And then Donald Cerrone said that Conor said he wouldn't be ready for April, and July looked like a better slot for Conor McGregor. So I sat here and I thought to myself, why the fuck are the UFC blocking this fight from happening over an issue such as who goes out and fights last? Like, I could understand if it was two separate title fights happening, and then generally speaking the precedent is the title fight, well, the title fight that's in the heavier weight class, that goes after, and the lighter weight class goes before. But the anomaly to this rule is Conor McGregor. And the reason I say this is he is the biggest draw in the sport of MMA. And you could argue, and potentially, he's the biggest draw in combat sports, full stop. And you're really going to stop this fight from happening over who goes out last? Let that sink in. So then I thought to myself, all right, so let me look at this card on April 13. Who's actually fighting on that day? What's happening? And this is actually already a card that's shaping up to look quite good. It's got Max Holloway against Dustin Poirier and Kelvin Gastelum against Israel Adesanya. So that's a lightweight fight and a middleweight fight are the two kind of headlining bouts for the card. UFC 236, UFC 236. Both of these fights are fucking interim title fights. So you're basically telling me that you want Conor McGregor to go before these two fights because these interim title fights mean more to you than Conor McGregor fighting. Now, from a sporting perspective, I can understand that because Conor McGregor lost the lightweight title. But the two guys fighting for the lightweight title are both guys that have previously lost to Conor McGregor. Now, I appreciate that was in the featherweight division, but they still lost to him, and it's still an interim title fight. It's not for the real fucking championship. The reason why this is such a big issue is because the UFC have never valued the interim title themselves. Tony Ferguson was the interim title holder, and he got injured doing media kind of obligations for the UFC on the week of the fight that he was meant to have with Khabib. He tripped over some wires and fucked his leg up, tore his knee or something, had to have an operation. So what did the UFC do? They basically put Khabib in a fight against Ali Quinta, who wasn't, I don't even believe he was ranked in the top 10 at the time, and just said, oh yeah, by the way, if Khabib wins this fight, he's the interim champion. If Al wins this fight, he's not the champion. He's not the interim champion. Like, that's how little value they put on the interim title themselves. Kobe Covington was the interim champion, and because of a squabble between him and the UFC, Kamaru Usman basically got a title shot against Tyron Woodley this past weekend over Kobe Covington. They put such little value on the interim titles themselves that when Brian Ortega was due to fight Max Holloway for the featherweight title, and Max Holloway had to pull out on the week of the fight because he had his own kind of health issues, Brian Ortega turned down an opportunity to fight for the interim title because he said to the UFC, it don't mean shit. I'm only going to fight for the actual belt because you guys don't actually put any value in your interim champions. Even if these two fights that I just mentioned before on April 13 were for the actual championships, the person that is going to add the most pay-per-view buys to the card is Conor McGregor. He could go in the fucking cage and have a thumb wrestling match with someone, a thumb war, and that would sell more pay-per-views than if he wasn't on the card. The point the UFC are missing here is these guys try to attain championships, not obviously because they want to be known as the best in the world, but I think a title that, you know, you don't get an actual belt for is being called a prize fighter. And one way of becoming a prize fighter is by being a champion and defending your title on a number of occasions. It's not very often that you can be a prize fighter without being a champion, and that's something that Conor McGregor is. It doesn't matter who he fights, but if he's on a card, you're guaranteed to do over 1 million pay-per-view buys. Compared to, say, this card without him would probably do, I don't know, 500,000, 600,000 pay-per-view buys. Add him on the card and it shoots up to over 1 million. The 2 times Conor McGregor fought Nate Diaz on UFC 196 and UFC 202, on both of those cards, Conor McGregor's fight was the main event. And lo and behold, on UFC 196, Miesha Tate and Holly Holm fought for the women's bantamweight title before Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor went out to fight, before they entered the octagon. So we've already seen these two guys, or we've already seen Conor McGregor main event a fight card where there's been a championship bout before his fight. I genuinely don't understand why the UFC get themselves into these positions where they get into these petty arguments with their biggest stars, their biggest talent. Now, with regards to Conor McGregor, I think all they're trying to do is wrestle some of the power away from him that he's attained over the years. It's getting to a point where Conor McGregor's brand is bigger than that of the UFC's. And the reason I say that is you could put a UFC card on and you're always going to get the hardcore fans watching like myself. If you put John Jones on a card, you'll get a number of casual fans that might watch. You put, I don't know, Brock Lesnar, you'll get a number of casual fans, people that come from a wrestling audience that watch. You put Conor McGregor on a card, you not only get the hardcores like myself, you not only get the casuals of the John Jones's audience, you not only get the kind of wrestling fans that watch the Brock Lesnar fights, you get a whole fucking variety of different people that are fascinated with Conor McGregor's celebrity. And you're really gonna fucking stop him from fighting in a main event slot because you put more value on your interim title belt. That's not the case. This is all happening because they just want to wrestle some of that power away from Conor McGregor. Similar sort of thing to when Conor McGregor was due to fight... Who was he meant to fight? He was meant to fight... I can't remember who it was now. But he was meant to fight someone, and then he basically said, I don't want to do... I think it was Nate Diaz. He was due to fight Nate Diaz in UFC 200. And Conor McGregor said, I'm not doing as much media as you want me to. So they said, all right, cool, they scrapped the fight. They didn't have him on their biggest show to date. And that UFC 200 card turned out to be a bit of a disaster because John Jones failed a drugs test, so he couldn't fight. And that actual card, if I have a look, I'm pretty sure it was Miesha Tate that ended up headlining that card. Miesha Tate vs Amanda Nunes. And that happened because the UFC cut their nose off to spite their face over Conor McGregor. And it's happening again. It's happened again. These fuckers need to get their act together because they're denying us, the fans, of seeing good fights, an opportunity to see fights that we've wanted to see for years because of a pissing contest with Conor McGregor. It literally makes no sense to me. He's the biggest star in the sport. People could argue he's the biggest star in combat sport, full stop. And you're denying us, the fans, the opportunity to watch him fight, and yourselves the opportunity to make exponentially more money because you've got a fucking silly point to prove. If you had put as much value in your interim titles from day dot, this would be a different conversation that I'm having with you now. But you didn't. You just contradict yourselves as you go along, and you make the rules up as you go along, and the people that suffer are us, the fans, and the fighters. Load of bollocks. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. Put your comments below. Please don't forget to share this with a mate and hit the thumbs up button, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We're doing a bit more progress on the subscription front, so please hit the subscribe button so we can get to 100 subscribers by the end of March. I might need to shift the goalpost on that target a little bit because I don't think we're going to hit it, but stranger things have happened. Anyway, I'll catch you guys next time.